I, like you, was brought up on an enormous amount of convoluted, ignorant beliefs as far as science and countless other things. The one thing that I always found differentiated myself is I absolutely refuse to believe illogical nonsense. I can never come to a reconciliation that Mother Nature is a convoluted mess of mishmash. Here's one thing, there's another thing, yada yada. Specifically, in talking about pulsars, like radio wave pulsars, X-ray pulsars, gamma pulsars, and galactic jets, which they actually also too called relativistic jets. Here's one end of a view of a relativistic jet. Here in the center, it's emitting trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen. Also too, over here on the far left, we can take a look at the edge of a galaxy in this hyperboloidal shape here. And we actually see this hourglass shape in the geomagnetic precession that defines the Lamore frequency necessitative, and this is of course the conjugate geometry of the universe, and of course these would be the magnetic, the toroidal magnetic, and we have the emission also too of trillions of tons of hydrogen. And over here on this image we're looking at a pulsar with X number of solar masses. Now specifically when scientists and common human beings talk about emissions, actually let me draw a frequency here. Looking at infrared here, and then visible somewhere right about here, and then over here we got X-ray, and then over here we have the Greek letter G, looking at gamma, and then something in the order of 20, 30, possibly even 60 magnitudes higher than that, we have what should be, let me erase all this stuff here. Let me eliminate out this picture. We should have the galactic jet that we see here. The reconciliation of light and matter, which I've been working on for years, I knew had to have the most divine simplex answer possibly imaginable, because we're not talking about different things when we're actually talking about draw it again over top of this diagram. Whoops. Infrared. Somewhere far over here we have to have the fundamental particle, the proton. It is a fact, as science has observed countless times, that a free neutron released from the nucleus in something the average of 17 minutes becomes a proton. So if all free neutrons manifest or turn into a proton, and I'm in full agreement with modern science on this, I mean their empirical observations on this are not to be discounted, then we fundamentally only have one particle, and the reconciliation of light and matter has to be divinely simplex. So we're looking at infrared here, visible, X-ray, gamma, and countless magnitudes over here. We have to have a fundamental particle. The building blocks of absolutely everything. These galactic jets being emitted from the black holes at the centers of galaxies here. Right here. These are those galactic jets emitted at the hyperboloid, or the hourglass shape. These galactic jets of trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen literally being emitted from black holes. The only thing we actually have to see is something so incredibly simplex. I don't know why any human being or any scientist has thought about that before. They literally think light is one thing and matter is another, but I mean, there's no such differentiation between infrared or visible light or X-ray here, or gamma here. This is all EMR. Excuse me, electromagnetic radiation. This is the coaxial circuit of light with transverse electrical magnetic longitudinal dielectric pulse perturbation that makes up the coaxial circuit of an ether perturbation that we call light. But we only think of light as being this super tiny section of EMR. We don't think of things we don't see as different things. We think of, well, X-ray is one thing, gamma is another, infrared is another. Well, no, they're not. They're all one and the exact same thing. It's ridiculous as thinking that ice, water, and steam are three different things, and of course they're not. They're all one fundamentally. Obviously so, one thing. So let me actually eliminate out this diagram and erase all this stuff here. So depending on the size of the solar mass, here we have, and this of course would represent the geomagnetic emission. And here's another larger solar mass, and another larger solar mass. And here we have something that's supermassive that has no magnitude, as I defined countless times. Something supermassive that has no magnitude. Because the conjugate nature of the geometry of the universe is dielectric and magnetic. The one thing that actually defines a black hole is a supermass with no magnitude, which is contrary to empirical human experience on Earth, but it's actually hyperlogical if you actually understand the conjugate nature of the universe. And here we have the emissions of trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen, atomic hydrogen. Here we have a radio wave pulsar, radio. Here we have a X-ray pulsar, increasing magnitude of solar masses here. Of course, this is inappropriate, increasing solar masses. Here we have a gamma. Hello, there we go. Here we have a gamma pulsar. So we have radio, X-ray, gamma, and finally, in the case of the black hole, galactic jets, which we have ample optical evidence for, both Hubble and otherwise, with increasing magnitudes of solar masses. We have one and the same thing along the electromagnetic spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. Way down over here, we have infrared increasing, and countless magnitudes, who knows what, 30, 60 magnitudes greater than that of gamma radiation. We actually have the emission of the fundamental building block of the entire universe, hydrogen. And of course, all elements, as I'm in full agreement with all branches of science, are nothing other than compounded constructs of hydrogen. I mean, I don't think there's a single astrophysicist on Earth that doesn't agree that all elements more complex than hydrogen are nothing other than compounded conglomerations of nuclear hydrogen that are actually fused and generated in the reactions of stars. We know that stars produce heavier and heavier elements, and you know that's hyperlogical, and it's impossible to disagree with that fact. So the reconciliation of light and matter is incredibly simplex. Mother Nature can't be that simple. We're simply looking at the electromagnetic spectrum, where increasing frequency culminates literally in the generation of a ZTP, zero-time particle, or hydrogen. Here we have a radio pulsar, here we have an X-ray pulsar, here we have a gamma pulsar, and here we actually have a black hole that's emitting trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen. And all of these things have one thing in common. That is a increasing, exponentially increasing solar mass. It can't be any more complex than that. It absolutely can't be. It's just impossible. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and goodbye.